ഇന്ന് നമുക്ക് സവിശേഷമായ വ്യക്തിത്വമുള്ള ഒരു ആളെയാണ് പ്രഭാഷണത്തിനായി കിട്ടിയിരിക്കുന്നത്. ഡോക്ടർ അനു ഗോപിനാഥ്. ഡോക്ടർ അനു ഗോപിനാഥിൻ്റെ ഇന്ത്യൻ ആർട്ടിക് പര്യവേഷണ അനുഭവങ്ങളും ആണ് നമ്മളുമായി പങ്കുവയ്ക്കുന്നത്. ആർട്ടിക്കും അന്റാർട്ടിക്കും എന്നൊക്കെ കേൾക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സിലേക്ക് ആദ്യം ഓടിയെത്തുന്നത് ആഗോളതാപനത്തെ പറ്റിയിട്ടാണ്. ആഗോളതാപനം എന്ന് ഈ മഞ്ഞുമലകൾ ഉരുകി ഭൂമിയെ അതിനടിയിലേക്കാക്കില്ലേ എന്നൊക്കെയുള്ള ശാസ്ത്രജ്ഞന്മാരുടെയും പരിസ്ഥിതി സ്നേഹികളുടെയും ഒക്കെ വാചകങ്ങളിൽ നിന്നാണ് ഈ രണ്ട് ധ്രുവപ്രദേശങ്ങളെയും നമുക്ക് പരിചിതമാവുന്നത്. പ്രത്യേകിച്ചും ഒരു മലയാള അധ്യാപകൻ എന്നുള്ള നിലയിൽ ചന്ദ്രമതിയുടെ റെയിൻ ഡിയർ എന്നൊരു കഥയുണ്ട്. ആ റെയിൻ ഡിയറിന്റെ കഥ ശരിക്കും നടക്കുന്നത് ആർട്ടിക്കിലാണ്. ആർട്ടിക്കില് റെയിൻ ഡിയർ വലിക്കുന്ന ആ സ്ലഡ്ജിലാണ് ഒരു ക്രിസ്മസ് ദിവസം ആ കഥ നടക്കുന്നത്. ഞാൻ സാന്ദർഭികമായി ഓർമ്മിച്ചു എന്നേ ഉള്ളൂ. ഈ എസ്കിമോകളുള്ള ഇഗ്ലു എന്നുള്ള ചെറിയ മഞ്ഞ് വീടുള്ള ഈ സ്ഥലത്തെ പറ്റി അങ്ങനെ ഒരു അറിവും മാത്രമാണുള്ളത്. ഇപ്പോ നമുക്ക് ആർട്ടിക് പര്യവേഷണത്തിൽ പങ്കെടുത്ത ഒരാളെ തന്നെയാണ് നമുക്കിവിടെ കിട്ടുന്നത്. നമുക്കറിയാം, ഭൂമിയുടെ ഏറ്റവും വടക്കേ അറ്റത്തായ ഉത്തര ധ്രുവത്തിന് ചുറ്റുമുള്ള മേഖലയാണ് ഈ ആർട്ടിക് സ്ഥലം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത്. ഗ്രീൻലാൻഡ്, അലസ്ക തുടങ്ങിയിട്ടുള്ള ഒരുപാട് സ്ഥലങ്ങൾ അതുമായി ചുറ്റപ്പെട്ടിരിക്കുന്നു. പാതിര സൂര്യനും ധ്രുവരാത്രിയും കാണാൻ പറ്റുന്ന പ്രദേശങ്ങളെന്നാണ് ആർട്ടിക്കിനെ പറ്റി വിശേഷിപ്പിക്കുന്നത്. പക്ഷെ അവിടുത്തെ ജനത 40 ലക്ഷത്തോളം ജനങ്ങൾ അധിവസിക്കുന്നു എന്ന് പറയുന്നു. അവിടുത്തെ തദ്ദേശീയ ജനവിഭാഗങ്ങൾക്ക് ഒരു തനതായ സംസ്കാരമുണ്ട്. അതിശൈത്യത്തിൽ പോലും ജീവിക്കാൻ ആവശ്യമായ ഗുണങ്ങൾ അവർ ആർജിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. ഈ ആർട്ടിക് എന്നുള്ള പദത്തിന്റെ നിഷ്പത്തി തന്നെ ഞാൻ വായിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളത് കരടി എന്ന പദത്തിലാണ്. നമുക്കറിയാം ധ്രുവക്കരടി, വെളുത്ത കരടി ധാരാളമുള്ള സ്ഥലം, അതുപോലെ പ്രകൃതിവാതകം, ധാതുക്കൾ, മത്സ്യങ്ങൾ തുടങ്ങിയവയെല്ലാം ആർട്ടിക്കിലെ പ്രകൃതി വിഭവങ്ങളാണ്. അപ്പോൾ ആർട്ടിക് പ്രദേശത്തെ കടലിലുള്ള മഞ്ഞുകട്ടകൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ മഞ്ഞുകട്ടകളിലൂടെയുള്ള സഞ്ചാരം, ഇതെല്ലാം നമ്മളെ സംബന്ധിച്ച് വെറും ഭാവന മാത്രമാണ്. പക്ഷെ അനു ഗോപിനാഥ് അവിടെ പോയി ചുറ്റി സഞ്ചരിച്ച് അനുഭവ പാഠങ്ങൾ ഉൾക്കൊണ്ടയാളാണ്. മൈനസിൽ നിന്നും മൈനസിലേക്ക് കുതിക്കുന്ന താപനിലയെ ഒരുപക്ഷെ നോക്കി കണ്ടയാളാണ്. ഇത്തരത്തിൽ ഉള്ള ഒരു പ്രദേശത്തെ നമുക്ക് വെള്ളപ്പുതപ്പ് പുതച്ചതുപോലെ മഞ്ഞുമൂടി തണുത്തുറഞ്ഞു നിൽക്കുന്ന ആ ഭൂമിയെ നമ്മുടെ സ്വീകരണ മുറികളിലേക്ക്, നമ്മുടെ വീടുകളിലേക്ക് കൊണ്ടുവരാൻ കഴിയുന്ന ഒരു പ്രഭാഷകയാണ് അനു ഗോപിനാഥ്. ഞാൻ മനസ്സിലാക്കിയിട്ടുണ്ട് ധാരാളം പാരിസ്ഥിതിക പ്രവർത്തനങ്ങളിൽ പങ്കാളിയായിട്ടുള്ള, തൻ്റെ ജീവിതം ശാസ്ത്ര ഗവേഷണത്തിനും പാരിസ്ഥിതിക മേഖലയ്ക്കുമായിട്ട് ഒഴിഞ്ഞു വെച്ചിട്ടുള്ള ശ്രീ അനു ഗോപിനാഥിനെ ചരിത്രമുറങ്ങുന്ന കലാലയമായ ശ്രീനാരായണ കോളേജിന് വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഈ വെബിനാറിലേക്ക് ഒരിക്കൽ കൂടി സ്വാഗതം ആശംസിക്കുന്നു. നമസ്കാരം.
താങ്ക് യു സർ.
താങ്ക് യു സുനിൽകുമാർ സർ. ഇന്നത്തെ പ്രഭാഷകയായ അനു ഗോപിനാഥിനെ പരിചയപ്പെടുത്തുന്നതിനായി അഗോരയുടെ ജനറൽ കൺവീനർ ഡോക്ടർ ജിഷ ടീച്ചറെ ക്ഷണിക്കുന്നു. Over to you, Jisha.
Thank you, Harry sir. Good evening all. With great pleasure, let me introduce Dr. Anu Gopinath. Currently, she is an assistant professor in chemical oceanography, Department of Aquatic Environment Management, Kerala University of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, Ocean Studies, Coofos. Prior to Coofos, she was an assistant professor in chemistry at St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam. Dr. Anu has 16 years of teaching and research experience. Her research interests include biogeochemistry of estuaries and coastal oceans, with special reference to hypoxia in coastal waters of Kochi, coral reef monitoring, sedimentary organic compounds from mangroves and their role in metal sequestration, marine nanoparticles, dissolved and sedimentary organic compounds from Arctic and coastal Antarctica, and microplastics. PhDs awarded under Dr. Anu's guideship is 4, and currently 4 PhD scholars are doing research along with her. Apart from 4 postdoctoral fellows, apart from this, 4 postdoctoral fellows are guided by Dr. Anu, and all these fellows are funded by KCST. The remarkable achievement of Dr. Anu Gopinath is her involvement in Indian Arctic expeditions 3 times, 2014, 2016, and 2017. She was included in the Arctic Indian expedition team. She was also a team leader of his 2017 batch expedition. Each expedition was for a period of 36 to 40 days. Dr. Anu has bagged Indian Association of Analytical Scientists Award for outstanding contribution in teaching and research in 2014. She was also awarded DST Fast Track Scheme for Young Scientists in 2012. Dr. Anu was a Commonwealth Fellow in 2012 as part of Commonwealth Fellowship. During this period, she was worked under Professor Eric Achterberg, National Oceanography Center, Southampton University, UK. Anu undergone an IOC SPAC training program in China in 2011 on coral reef monitoring. Dr. Anu was awarded DST Women Scientist Fellowship in 2006. In 2019, she was selected for Southern Ocean Expedition, Coastal Antarctica. This project was funded to CUFOS by Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India, and she is acting as the principal investigator of the project. Dr. Anu Gopinath has completed 6 major projects, research publications, International 45, book authored as first author with ISBN numbers 9, book chapters, International 2, and other positions held by Dr. Anu are member of Governing Council, Indian Arctic Expedition, Indian leader of the batch 2017, then Nodal Officer CUFOS Inquiry Center at CUFOS, Principal Investigator of Soil and Water Analysis Lab. She was a member of Studies of Marine Chemistry, CUFOS, and Board of Studies in Environmental Science. She is a team coordinator of UGC 12B team visit to CUFOS, January 2021. With immense happiness and love, I welcome Dr. Anu Gopinath to the 23rd talk of Agora 2021 webinar series organized by SN College Kollam. Over to Dr. Anu.
Thank you, Gisha, for this introduction. And at the outset, I would like to thank the principal, Dr. R. Sunil Kumar, for inviting me to be a part of this seminar series. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Hari and also the IQSC coordinator and Dr. Jisha, the coordinator of this particular webinar series, and also all the other teachers who have been contributing towards the successful conduct of this webinar series. So I understand that this webinar series have been conducted. This is an ongoing program of SN College for the last 3 years. So I can understand the effort as well as the pain that you people are taking so as to conduct it in a very smooth manner. So I think since it is an online event and we have limited time, so let me directly go to the presentation. And since I just had an idea that this is more or less the audience is actually from different disciplines. So I have tried my level best to make it as general as possible. Nothing serious about the Arctic science research, just to have an idea about how the area is actually, how the Indian Research Station is maintained at Arctic, and what are the things that we normally have as interesting to a common man as part of the Arctic expedition. So I will share this.
Screen ആയിക്കോളും. Okay.
Sure.
കാണാം.
I think
കാണാം.
it can.
കാണാം.
Okay. So, that this is actually, I don't know how many of you know from the students, how many of you know about KUFOS, Kerala University of Fisheries and Oceans Science. I think the first university in India focusing on both the category of fisheries and ocean science, which was established in 2011. And we do have a large number of programs focusing on the fisheries, Bachelor of Fisheries, then Master of Fisheries, as well as other master's science programs like marine biology, geology, marine chemistry, environmental science, physical oceanography, etc. So that if you are from the science background, so there are a lot of interesting courses which may be of useful to you for your higher studies after the undergraduate program. So to begin with this, I think first we should have an idea about the Arctic Ocean, as well as that is actually it's a journey to the top of the world. When you think about an Arctic expedition, it's a journey to the top of the world, and we all know that is the major oceans as well as the major continents. Anyway, it's good that we can have just a slight going back to the geography and the history which we have covered as part of the school courses. So you can see that the Arctic Ocean that is actually within the top of this world, and the Southern Ocean which is actually encircling the coastal Antarctica. These are two very important area, or two major research focus of a lot of countries who have been conducting a lot of research related to polar science. And anyway, our India is also a part of all these research into the polar seas, both into the Arctic Ocean and also into the Southern Ocean. And Southern Ocean is actually the coastal Antarctic Ocean. So what I'll be sharing my experiences to the Arctic expedition, even though we have been selected last year to the Southern Ocean expedition, even just before the COVID. Two of my students, they were fortunate enough to be a part of the Southern Ocean expedition team, and they have completed their 2 months expedition, and they have came back in 2020 February. So you can just see that the North Pole and the Arctic Ocean and the countries which are actually encircling the North Pole, which we call it as the Arctic Circle. Sir has already, your principal has already mentioned a lot about the countries which are actually coming in the Arctic Circle. So we have Russia, then Norway, and then Greenland is there, then a part of the United States, Alaska is also coming as a part of this Arctic Circle. Of course, Canada is also there. Our research focus, or when we think about an expedition to Arctic, the major focus should be on this particular area. That you can see very close to the North Pole. This is marked as Svalbard. And Svalbard is nothing but it is a Norwegian archipelago. Archipelago is nothing but it's a group of islands. So this Svalbard, our entire focus during this presentation will be based on our research programs, which are mainly focused on this particular Norwegian archipelago, which is known as Svalbard. So now coming to this research community which is located in this Svalbard. See, this actually gives you an overall picture of the different research stations which are owned by different countries like UK, India, China, then Korea, Italy, in this particular archipelago. So this station, this Svalbard archipelago, when you enter into this particular archipelago, you can just see a group of wooden buildings. buildings, a group of wooden buildings which are acting as the research stations of various countries. And so this is actually a part of Norwegian government. So this is actually actually midway between the continental Norway and the exact North Pole, what we call it as the exact North Pole, that is the top of this world. And this man, actually, when we start the presentation, it's good that we should have an idea about Roald Amundsen. And as we all know, he was the first leader for the air expedition to North Pole. Especially, he was the first person for making the entry into both the poles, that is both South Pole and North Pole. So in this research community that I have shown you, in this particular research station, in this a particular area, you can just see this Roald Amundsen's statue. Now, just before we enter into the actual presentation, just a little bit about the history of this particular region, Svalbard. See, previously, this Svalbard is known as Spitsbergen, and I have already told you that it's a Norwegian archipelago. And this particular area actually was very famous for coal mining at the beginning of the 20th century. And the Svalbard Treaty of 1920 recognizes the Norwegian sovereignty over this particular area. And the 1925 Svalbard Act made this particular region a full part of the Kingdom of Norway. There are some settlements which are happening in this particular area. One such important settlement is Longyearbyen. And another important settlement is New Elsund. And also there is another Russian mining community which is settled at another region which is known as the Barentsburg. So this particular research station or the research community where I have shown you that a group of wooden buildings, it is actually exactly placed in this archipelago, and that particular area is named as New Elsund. So what you have to
Anu, one second. There is some noise in the background.
Okay. Is it okay?
Thank you.
Fan.
Okay.
So this is actually this area in the beginning of the 20th century. This coal mining was a very important activity which was happening in this particular area. Now, when you enter into this particular archipelago, the very important observation is that almost 60% of this is covered with glaciers. So, and another important thing, another important feature of this archipelago is what we call it as the fjords. Fjords are just like what we call estuaries, not estuaries, just like an estuary. A narrow, long inlet of water body where we will have glaciers on the other side. So you have a water body, and along with glaciers on the sides of this water body. So there are a large number of fjords. There are J is actually silent. A large number of fjords which are coming as part of this Arctic region, and during this World War, actually, this area has been exploited a lot for this mining operations. And after this war, again, the Norwegian government, they started re-establishing this mining practices of the two settlements that I have mentioned you, Longyearbyen and the New Elsund. And in this particular New Elsund, our research community is established nowadays. And what happened is that in this mining, during this mining operations, this particular area, the New Elsund, which I have shown you in that figure, that area, they had several fatal accidents, and when there was a massive kill of people, around 71 people during the year 1945 to 1954, and from 1960 to 1963, the Norwegian government, they decided to close down the mining operations in that particular area. In 1964 onwards, whatever building was there as part of the mining community. See, the mining community were having a settlement there. Their family was there, so there were small hospitals. There were small preliminary schools for the children of the mining community, and all these were small wooden buildings. So, what the Norwegian government has decided is that in 1964, after this mass killing of the people as part of mining operation, the Norwegian government in 1964, they decided to close down the mining operation. And what they did is that they converted all the wooden buildings into research stations. So now these wooden buildings are used by several countries as their research stations on the basis of this agreement between the respective country and the Norwegian government. So this is my first visit to Arctic was in 2014, and this is how the entire area looked like when we made our first visit in 2014. So in 2014, when we made the first visit, actually what I remember is that almost all that wooden building and area very outside this building, it was completely covered with ice, and already the glaciers are already covered with ice. Apart from that, most of the buildings and the surroundings were also completely covered with ice. Now, I don't know how many of you know about India's research endeavors in Arctic and Antarctic. See, actually, we started our Antarctic research endeavors in 1981, and India's first research station was established in Antarctica in the year 83. And it took a lot of years for us to start the first research station in Arctic. And the first research station, our research station in Arctic was started in 2008. And the research station in Arctic is actually named as Himadri. So this is one of the wooden buildings. So there are a large number of wooden buildings which were earlier used by the mining community. So now this, as a part of this research establishment, what is actually happening is that each building is taken on a lease basis by different country. So this is that building that is being owned by our country, India. So India has named this particular research station as Himadri. Now, this was actually inaugurated in that particular year, 2008, by our minister minister at that time, Sri Kapil Sibal. So you can just, when you enter into this building, that on that wooden platform, you can see that this plaque is actually seen there. Whether you can see it was inaugurated by the minister. Now, coming to the other international research initiatives in Arctic. See, we started only in 2008, but several other countries started the research initiatives in Arctic right from 1991. So the German and the French stations, they're actually occupying a single wooden building. They started in 1991, and each and every country is actually having separate names for their country's research station. So the German-French station is actually named under this Alfred Wagner Institute, so that it is it is named like that. Then the British station is named as NERC. Then the China, they started in 2003, that is named after the famous river in China, that is Elo River Station, and the Korean station was established in 2002, and that is named as Dasan. And again, Italy also started in 1999, and it is named as Dirigible Italia, and we started our station in 2008. So this is the first team member of, the team members of the 2014 batch. So I think it was we started going from 2009 onwards, 9 or 10 onwards. We started the station at 2008, and we started India started their expeditions from 9 onwards. That is what I think. I'm not sure. Anyway, 2009 or 10, we have started our expeditions, and I was a member of that team in 2014. So this is the team members of 2014 expedition, and I would like to just for your information, or to make it more interesting. So this person is actually he's a Malayali, and he's also an alumni of Cochin University of Science and Technology, Dr. K.P. Krishnan, and Dr. K.P. Krishnan is actually coordinating our research initiatives as far as the Arctic is concerned. And again, he is also this person. He is also an alumni of QSAT, Dr. Sajeevan, and he is also from the Krishnan is from Marine Biology Department QSAT, and Dr. Sajeevan is also from Department of Marine Biology QSAT. So actually, why I just wanted to mention is that a lot of alumni of QSAT and other universities in Kerala, a lot of Malayalis are actually a part of the Indian research initiatives in Arctic. Not only Malayalis, from all over the state, all over India, but to make it more interesting to our audience from the Kerala colleges, I just wanted to inspire you to come forward and to do more good research as far as the science is concerned. And again, this is the 2016 batch. Again, here also, I think a lot of people are from Kerala. She is Dr. Valsama. Dr. Valsama is again an alumnus of QSAT, now presently the director of School of Environmental Sciences, National Center for Aquatic Animal Health Diseases, Cochin University of Science and Technology. And she is Dr. Smita. Dr. Smita is also from QSAT, but presently she is working as a scientist in Center for Marine Living Resources, Kochi. She is a physical oceanographer. Dr. Valsama is from Environmental Science. And these are two students from, again, two research scholars from Mahatma Gandhi University School of Environmental Sciences, Dr. Joyce and, this is Joyce and this is Dr. Gopi Krishna. They are research scholars from School of Environmental Sciences, Mahatma Gandhi University. Okay, and this girl is a scientist from NCOR, and he is also a project fellow from NCOR. And this is Dr. Ganesh, and Dr. Ganesh is from Pondicherry University. Okay, so a lot of people are participating in the Indian Arctic initiatives expeditions, both from Kerala and also from various other research institutes all over our country. Okay. And also, I would like to introduce my students who are also a part of the expeditions. And so this girl is actually Ashwati. She did her post-graduation from Sacred Heart, not Sacred Heart, the Bharat Mata College, Trikakara. And now presently she's working as a research scholar with me, and she participated twice in the Arctic expedition. And now she is maybe in the final stage of her PhD work, and her work is actually focusing on the Arctic area. So as part of her research activity, she has been a part of the expedition team in 2018 and in 2019, 18 and 19. So 2 expeditions. And again, I have told you that there are students from QFOS, not only from QFOS, QSAT and MG University, from everywhere students are participating. And again, 2 of our students, Princey and Dr. Girish, they have participated in the Southern Ocean expedition very recently. That is in 2019, December to 2020, February. That is almost a 3 months long expedition. And again, my student Anoop, he was also a part of the expedition. He also visited Arctic in 2014. And Anoop was actually fortunate enough to visit both the poles. He could visit the Arctic, and also he could visit the Southern Ocean, that is close to the Antarctica. So these are the photos of his visit to the Southern Ocean. This is the Arctic visit. And again, these are all students from this Gopi Krishnan. Again, he's also a research scholar from Mahatma Gandhi University. So a lot of students, as part of their research work, are getting chances to be a part of India's polar research initiatives, that is to both the poles, that is to Arctic and also to coastal Antarctica, Southern Ocean, and also into the Antarctica itself. Okay. So coming to the research initiatives, from where these operations are actually, or which agency or which government institute is actually coordinating the research initiatives, our research initiatives in Arctic, then Southern Ocean and Antarctica. Okay, we have 3 polar expedition. One is to Arctic, then to Southern Ocean, and the third one is to Antarctica itself. So this is actually coordinated by an agency or a central government institute in Goa, situated at Goa, that is National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, NCPOR. Earlier it was known as NCAOR, but now it is renamed as NCPOR, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, and this center is actually coming under our Ministry of Earth Science. Okay, so all the funding for our polar research, Arctic, Antarctic, Southern Ocean, and also to the Himalayan studies. The Himalayan studies are also being monitored by NCPOR. So all the funding for this research initiative is actually granted by our ministry, that is the Ministry of Earth Science. Okay, so this institute is actually coordinating the activity. So I have shown you Dr. Krishnan, who is coordinating the polar Arctic research initiative. Actually, he is working as a scientist at NCPOR Goa, and we have so many Malayali people working as scientists at National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, and they are a part of the Himalayan studies, then the Arctic studies, and also the Arctic studies. Okay. Now, this is our 2017 batch. So I think I have already, Jisha has already mentioned that I have been a part of the expedition in 2014. At that time, I was working at St. Teresa's College as an assistant professor in chemistry. And in 2015, I joined QFOS, and I went from QFOS in, I visited Arctic as part of the QFOS community in 2016, and another one was in 2017. So this is again the 2017 batch. Again, also we have along with me, you have Dr. Jasmine. Dr. Jasmine is actually from Zoological Survey of India. She is also from Kerala. And this is sorry, not doctor, he's a research scholar, John. And John is actually working as a research scholar, Mahatma Gandhi University. This is Dr. Prashant. Dr. Prashant is a very famous person working in cyanobacteria. He's from BHU, Banaras Hindu University. It's a very well-known Indian scientist working in cyanobacteria. And this is Dr. Deepti. Dr. Deepti is from Odisha, and she is working on bendos. Okay, so again we had 2 more people from Kerala, Dr. Jasmine and John. John is a research scholar. Okay. So why I'm mentioning about the research scholar is that a lot of people are getting interested to work on Arctic, and if their guide or their PI is having some interesting projects related to work on the polar areas, these students are also getting an opportunity to make their visit into the polar region. So that's very important. This area, this particular region, and this photograph is very interesting in the sense that this photograph we have taken from the Longyearbyen. I have already mentioned you that there are actually 2-3 important settlements. One is the research settlement that we are having at New Elsyn. This is the another settlement which we call it as the Longyearbyen. So this is actually the last point of your Wi-Fi. As what when you enter into the research community at New Elsyn, actually there is no Wi-Fi and no other WhatsApp, nothing is there. Okay. So, this at this point, Longyearbyen, at this airport of Longyearbyen, actually you will have the Wi-Fi, your Wi-Fi connectivity will be cut off. Okay. So from this Longyearbyen, from the airport of Longyearbyen, what is happening is that there are some chartered flight which can carry actually 7 or 8 people. I remember it is 7 or 8. Okay. So what happens is that these flights are normally when the research communities are active in the Arctic, when the research communities from the different countries, they start their expeditions in Arctic. So what happens is that this chartered flight will be arranged by the Norwegian community as Norwegian government as part of the research agreement between the Norwegian government and the individual country. So from this airport, in this chartered flight, they will take us to the research station. The research station is located in another group, small island, which we call it as the New Elsen. So there also we have a very small airport, and so in this chartered flight, we will be reaching the New Elsen Airport, and from the New Elsen Airport, we will be moving to a research station, India's research station, that is Himadri. Okay, so these are some interesting pictures. So this is from the 2016, and this is the 2017. Okay, again, this is actually from the living room that Himadri is actually having 3 or 4 rooms for staying, and there is one lab, there is one computer room, and there is one living room. So that this is a very small living room. So this is a 2017 picture, and this is a 2016 picture. Okay, and so these are some interesting photographs that I have taken, okay, just to show you. Okay, now when you enter into, first you enter into this research community as a part of leader, as a part of the team member, any team member, not only of India, of any other country. The first and the most important thing is that they will give you a training on this rifles, okay, rifles and flare gun. So there will be some practical on the, when you enter immediately, even 1 or 2 days after, just immediately before you go to the field, it is very compulsory that they give you a theory session on this rifle usage. And after that, they will take you to a remote place. There are trained people, and so they will take you. This is Dr. Sajivan. This is actually Dr. Sajivan during our 2014 visit. So what happens is that they will take you at a remote place, and then there they will give you a practical experience, how to use this rifles and this flare gun. Okay. So these are the different training programs, training sessions we have undergone as part of 2014. Then this is 2017, and I think this is 2016, or not 17 itself. Okay. So why the training is given to the scientist as part of this research initiative is that this is actually, this picture I have taken from the net, the picture of the polar bear. So that this actually, we know that this Arctic is very much famous for the polar bears. So that whenever we are entering into the station, or whenever we are into the field as part of the research initiatives, if you are going to the sample collection, so there is always a possibility of this encounter with the polar bears. Okay, and there is always a possibility. So what happens is that now, as Sir has already mentioned, your principal has already mentioned, due to this climatic changes and other things, the melting of this ice caps and glaciers and other things, actually there are a lot of issues connected with food and shelter of this polar bear. So that means normally when we go year after year, what happens is that the chances of this encounter is getting increased. So they are coming to this human settlements. The polar bears are making frequent visit to the human settlements, especially when the researchers are there in the human research stations. They are just for food and other things, they are making frequent visit to the human settlements. So it is very essential that you should have a training on this rifles and flare gun. So whenever, as per the rule that is existing in that community, the research community, so whenever you are into that field work, it is very compulsory that one member of that team, they should carry this flare gun and also this rifle. Okay, and so actually normally it is not supposed that we should have a direct attack on the polar bear. So actually it is as per the rule, we have to inform the authorities as part of the research center there, and they have trained staff, and then they have mechanism for operating this flare gun, and only under very unavoidable circumstances only they will attack this animal. Otherwise, they will have some other legal complications also. Okay, but as part of the existing rules of the Norwegian government, it is very compulsory that all the researchers that are entering into the station, they must be trained in this rifles and flare guns, so as to make them safe while they go to the field trip. Okay. Now, in this particular research station, Himadri, see, we are as part of the research sample collection there. So we have a very small lab. Actually, I don't know whether we can call it as a lab when we think, like it's just like a very small room which is converted into a basic laboratory facility with filtration unit and small pipettes and burettes and other things. So you can do, if you are doing on this phytoplanktons and pigments, if you're doing that kind of work, it's very important for you to filter the sample. Once you are back from the field, it's very important that you should filter it and you should store it. You cannot keep the sample for a longer time. So the basic facility for filtration, the basic facility for refrigeration, and a very small UV visible spectrophotometer. These are the these are the very small things which have been provided in this lab as part of the research initiative. Okay. And again, there is a very small computer room also within that Himadri research station. So I have already told you that there is no Wi-Fi connection, but how can you communicate with the homeland? Is that we can have the email and other facilities there. And so that email is the best method that you can get connected with your homeland. And also there is one land phone which is kept within this Himadri station. But it is not like that you can use the phone each and every time just to ask about the whereabouts of your home, but it's only for emergency situation. So if suppose the NCPR people, the scientists or the responsible persons from NCPR, if they want to contact the research team at Himadri, they can use the phone. Okay, and if you want to communicate some serious urgent matters with NCPR, then you can use that phone. Otherwise, the thing that you can have, you can get connected with the homeland is it is basically through the emails, no phones and nothing. Okay. And again, I have told you that there is a very small laboratory facility which is kept within our research station, Himadri. It's not that much big, only simple facility. And suppose you want to have some kind of experimental setup. Since if you are biology people, like working on some seaweeds or some other things, or which you want to keep some laboratory experiments, live laboratory experiments. So the Norwegian government, they have, as part of the research community, they have maintained one wooden building they have kept as a laboratory. So that is, it is named as Kings Bay Marine Laboratorium. So in this, you have like -80 freezers, like -80, then -20 freezer, and then what we call it as the pure water system, that is the millipore water, and then you have the facility for live maintaining of the animals. Everything is there in this particular building. But don't one thing that you have to remember is that right from our entry into the research station Himadri until our exit, everything is paid. Okay, everything is paid. So who is actually paying? It is the Ministry of Earth Science. The Ministry of Earth Sciences has, they have, as part of the agreement, they are actually paying to the Norwegian counterpart for all the research activity that we are doing there. The laboratory usage, our food and everything is actually under payment. So this laboratory also, so whenever we go for the expedition, suppose even before we start from here, NCR they will ask us whether we need the laboratory facility of this marine laboratorium. Because actually initially I was just wondering why we want to give it in well in advance. So the thing is that based on our requirement, the India government will have to make payment to the laboratory people. So that's very, very important. And again, I have told you that coming to the, it is not exactly on the Arctic, exactly on the 90-degree or the North Pole, the research initiatives are located. It is more connected with the areas which we call as the fjord. I have told you fjords are just like our small estuary like water body, which is actually connected to the Arctic Ocean and Atlantic Ocean on one side, Arctic Ocean on one side, and on the other side you can have a large number of glaciers, means the Manyumala. So, so there are people, when people are getting selected as part of the Arctic expedition, one thing that you have to remember is that people are selected from a different background, okay, mainly from the science background, from different scientific area. So there are people working on the chemical aspect. The chemical oceanographers are there, the physical oceanographers are there, then the marine biology people are there, and the geology people. Why the geology people go there? The geology people are basically focusing more on the glaciers. Okay, not in the ocean part, they are focusing more into the glacier. Manyumala ice core experiment, that is what the geology people are doing. So for us, people like me, for example, for those who are working on the chemical part, then like Smita, who's working on the physical part and the physical oceanography part, and like Jasmine, who is working on the biology part. Jasmine is actually working on zooplanktons, more precisely on zooplankton, I think phytoplankton also. And for people like Sajivan, they are working on the marine bacteria. Okay, so there are people working on different aspects. Okay, working mainly focusing on the water column. Oceanographers are mainly focusing on the water column. So for all the field work and other things, again the facility is provided by this Norwegian counterpart. Okay, so again you will be thinking it is free of cost. No, it is not free of cost. And what I understand is that for this sampling vessel, the research vessel and other things, we are paying a huge amount. They see, for example, I think what I understand is that I don't remember exactly the amount, but maybe for an 6 to 8 hour of hiring the research vessel, I understand that it will come around 50,000. Okay. So if you are there into the field for continuously, for how long you will be there in the field, for this particular hour, you have to pay 50,000 in Indian rupees. So for each and each additional hours, the India government will be paying more and more amount for your research sampling. Okay. So these are, but again, the sampling is, and again, from your research station to the research vessel, you want to carry a lot of instruments. You have to carry the bottles, you have to carry the other things like the net and other grab, several things are there. So all these things, actually there is nothing like any other vehicle that you can transport it from your station to the vessel, and from the vessel back to the lab. So how you can use it, how you can move the things is that you have this cycle with this trolley facility is there. So you have to use this kind of facility to transport the sampling equipments from your station to the field, and the samples from the field back to your station, that is your lab, so as to keep it in your laboratory. Okay. And so we do actually a lot of operations, sampling operations, starting with the physical oceanographers. As we know, the physical oceanographers, for them, the major operation is with the CTD. This is a CTD, that is conductivity, temperature, depth profiler, which can give you an idea about the temperature, then the depth, then the conductivity, then chlorophyll value, etc. And the average depth of this particular fjord, there are large number of fjords coming as part of the Arctic Ocean. The photos that I'm showing you is a part of the fjord, which is known as Kongsfjorden. And this particular fjord, Kongsfjorden, is actually having an average depth of 300 to 400 meter. At some places it will be maybe up to less than 10 meter, and it can move again, it can go up to 300 to 400 meter. So that means very small very small depth stations to very large depth stations are actually a part of this particular fjord that I am showing you. So the first operations to start with as part of every expedition in the ocean part is actually the CTD operation. Okay. So that this is the CTD, and then so that it is actually moved through this winch. So there is a winch for operating the CTD and other things. The CTD is actually, the first step is to deploy the CTD, and then we will retrieve the CTD measurements, and based on the CTD measurements, the biology people, the chemistry people and other people, they can sit together and they can decide about the sampling stations. So again, we will go for next sampling, and then so these are the water samplers that we use in ocean sampling. Maybe the zoology people will be familiar with these kind of instruments. For the general audience, I don't know how they know about this instrument. These are actually samplers, which we call it as the Niskin samplers. So which we use normally to collect samples from different depths in the ocean. All these instruments are actually available. Some of the instruments are available at the Indian Research Station. Some instruments will be taken from the Marine Laboratorium, and also some will be taken on a hiring basis or on a payment basis as part of our research understanding. Okay. And again, those who are working on the benthos means the bottom sediment and the organisms which are dwelling in the bottom sediment, that we call as the benthic organism. So many scientists, I have shown you Deepti from Odisha, and Dr. Bijoy Nandan from QSAT is also a part of Arctic expedition. And this Dr. Bijoy is a benthic expert. He's working on the organisms which are living within the sediment. So those who are working on the benthic aspect, they have to use this particular instrument. Normally this instrument is used for the collecting sediments from the ocean depth, and we call it as a grab. So when you do this grab operation, and then the grab operation again through the winch, we do the grab operation, then we collect the sediment. And so this is the sediment that is collected from the bottom. And these are some of the pictures that I have taken from Deepti as part of her benthic collection. So these are some of the benthic organisms which have been collected by Deepti and also by Jasmine as part of the expedition. So these photographs have been taken from them. Okay. And again, I have told you there are people working on phytoplankton and on zooplankton. And Dr. Jasmine from Zoological Survey of India, her project was more on zooplanktons. So this is a net. These nets are actually used for, one part is used for collecting the phytoplankton, and this particular this one is actually used for collecting the zooplanktons. So these are the pictures of two zooplanktons, which I have collected from Jasmine. So likewise, what happens is that I just wanted to tell you that we, as part of our research expeditions, the India government is actually paying money to the Norwegian counterpart as part of the research agreement. And they are actually hiring the research vessel for our research activity. So people from different institutes in India, research institute as well as university. And as I understand, QSAT is having a center between NCPOR, a collaborative research center. So a lot of people are getting opportunity from QSAT to be a part of Arctic expedition. Then Mahatma Gandhi University, I think specifically the Environmental Science, School of Environmental Science, they are also getting, they are also having a collaboration with NCPOR. So, and some other universities, we don't have any MOU with NCR, but I think I have got already got 2 chances, and my student has got 2 chances to be a part of Arctic. And again, we are having a 3-year project in the Southern Ocean also. Okay, so these are some interesting things that the universities in Kerala, we are having some tie-ups with these kind of national institute through Ministry of Earth Science, Government of India. And through these research initiatives and research projects, our students are actually getting a lot of benefits, that a lot of areas, research areas, they can explore a lot of areas, both in the ocean side and also in the glacier side for the geologist. Okay. So now these are some interesting photographs which I have taken during the sampling. So when we start the sampling, especially if you are most of the expedition, and also again one more thing, most of the expedition, as far as the oceanographers are concerned, most of the expeditions to this Arctic, we prefer to go in the summer. Because in the winter season, almost all these areas, including the fjord and everything, will be completely covered with ice. So there is no possibility of getting into the fjords to collect the water sample. Okay, so most expeditions, as far as the oceanographers are concerned, that will be mainly to the with the mainly in the summer season. So these photographs were taken as part of the summer expedition. So they can see due to this melting of this glaciers and other things, you can see that you can see a lot of small icebergs which are floating here and there on the surface of the water. Okay, and so is there any issue? I can see 2-3 people are raising their hand. Any problem?
No problem. No
Okay,
problem. That's
okay.
chat box.
Yeah, okay. Now again, VSSC, Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, Trivandrum. Again, this Trivandrum VSSC is also having a lot of collaborations with NCR in work related to the black carbon in the polar area, that is the atmospheric sampling. As part of the atmospheric sampling, black carbon. So there they do a lot of sampling, that is the air sampling as well as snow sampling, air sampling and snow sampling to work on the black carbon aspect. And I have seen Dr. Suresh. Dr. Suresh is a Bhatnagar Award winner, and he has won several prestigious scientific awards, and he is working a lot on the black carbon, and he has a lot of research experience both in the Arctic and in the Antarctica. So as part of their research activity, some people work on the snow samples also. This is just for a curiosity, I have taken the picture. I'm not doing any work on snow samples. Okay. Now, again, once you make your entry into the Arctic, see, I have shown you in the picture that there are only some wooden buildings which are owned by different countries as part of their research activity. And one particular person, if you are entering into an expedition from India, I understand that the normal duration of an expedition for a particular person will be from 36 to 40 days. Okay, maybe it can get extended due to lack of this flight and other means non-availability of flight and other things. In some cases, it may get extended, but normally it is 36 to 41 days. So during that your stay there, the allowed weight, when you plan your trip to Arctic expedition, there is a minimum weight limit that is being set by it is already set there in your deputation order itself. It is, I think it's around 20 kg. It cannot extend 20 kg. So that means you need a lot of polar clothing and other things. So that means the clothing itself, the polar clothing itself will come around 20 kg. So what all things you can carry is that the food and other items, it will be very limited. Okay. So during the period of stay, if you need some very personal things, so for example, maybe some toothpaste or any very emergency things, not the other things, very emergency things. So there is a very small shop which is owned by the Norwegian counterpart. So this shop actually they will open on 2 days, on 2 days in a week, on Monday and I remember it's on Thursday, Monday and Thursday. So Monday and Thursday every evening 4 to 5 they will open this particular shop. So during that time, all the researchers from different countries, if you need something urgent, say for example, urgent items means never think that it is the food or any other very lavish things. All very urgent items only they will sell, so that you can just enter into that shop. That 1 hour they will open it, and then you can have a purchase on payment basis. Okay. And again, during that particular period of stay, because you are there for a long period period of 36 to 41 days. There is also a small gym, a gym facility. Don't think that it is the gym facility that we see normally in our city places. Very preliminary things like 1 or 2 treadmill and some other very small things, so that if you want to work out in that particular cold climate, you can use that gym facility also. So gym facility is completely free of cost. It is open to all. No need to pay extra amount for this gym facility. But if you want to purchase some basic things, you have to pay it from your pocket itself, and it is very expensive also. Okay. And again, this is one more interesting thing as far as the research station is concerned. You can see a post office there. So this post office, you can call it as this post office as the post office on the top of the world. I would like to say that is the northernmost post office in the world. Why this post office is maintained there is, see, I have already told you that all the wooden buildings were constructed for the mining community. Okay. So this post office was also there for the mining community. So even though the community is not operating now, they have maintained the building as such. They have maintained the building as such. So just for the curiosity, what we can do is that you can just go to the post office again. Once in a while, they will engage a person there, an employee of the Norwegian counterpart will be there. So you can have postcard from the shop, and you can just post it from this post office. And some will get it, because my student by Ashudi, when she was there on her first expedition, she posted a postcard for me, and I could get that postcard before she came back to India. And me and Sanjeevan, we have tried to post one when we were there in 2014, but unfortunately I couldn't get it at my home. So just for a curiosity, researchers find they will use this, and then this maybe it may reach your home. Sometimes it will reach, and sometimes you will miss it. So this, as they have kept it as without any alterations, and so that you call it as the northernmost post office in the world. Again, you might be thinking, what is the use of keeping this post office? Maybe the researchers are there only for the summer season. So how it is benefited is that, again, that is another question. See, I think you might have noticed nowadays we have a lot of tour programs being operated to the Arctic also. Okay, especially to this Greenland and other areas. A lot of tourist operations are going on. So while going through the Arctic Circle, there is the permission is given for the tourist ship. The permission is given to the tourist ship to come to the research station, to come close to the research station, and they can just roam around the area, not into the research station. They are never allowed to enter into any of the room, but the tourist people can take the permission from the Norwegian authority, and they can just roam around that area. So for that, while they roam around, this post office is a very interesting thing for them. So they will come there and they will try to post, and so it's a means of revenue for the Norwegian counterpart, because out of curiosity they will try to post something to their homeland. So a lot of and we, as part of when we were there for the expedition, we have seen a lot of Indians coming as part of the tourist group and making their visit into the research island. So remember, no tourist people is allowed to enter into any of the wooden building, that is into any of the research station owned by any of the country. Okay. It's not like that. നമ്മളിപ്പം ഇന്ത്യക്കാരാണ്, സോ നമുക്ക് ഇന്ത്യയുടെ സ്റ്റേഷൻ ഒന്ന് കയറി കണ്ടു കളയാം, ജസ്റ്റ് ഹിമാദ്രിയുടെ അകത്ത് എന്താണെന്ന് നമുക്കൊന്ന് നോക്കാം, അങ്ങനത്തെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊന്നും അവിടെ അലൗഡ് അല്ല. സോ ദേ ക്യാൻ ജസ്റ്റ് ഹാവ് എ ഫോട്ടോ ഫ്രം ഔട്ട്സൈഡ് ദ സ്റ്റേഷൻ ആൻഡ് ദേ ക്യാൻ ഗോ ബാക്ക്. ഓക്കെ. Now again, there are stations owned by a large number of countries. So I have told you that the Korean station, this is Dasen. The actually Korean station is much bigger than the Indian station. The Chinese station as well as the Korean station much bigger than the Indian stations. And then the German station is also very big, and almost all the stations are actually much bigger than the Indian stations. And again, this is actually a hotel. This is actually, you can see that it is North Pole Hotel. It is written like that. Again, another wooden building. So what is the purpose of this particular hotel there in this particular research community is that, suppose your country is not having any research station in North Pole. Fortunately, India is having, suppose the country is not having, say for example, Pakistan is not having any research station in this particular community. Suppose a group from Pakistan or a researcher from Pakistan, he wants to do something very seriously on the Arctic region. So what they can do is that their country can, if their country can afford, or if their institute can afford this particular hotel, they can come and stay here. They stay there, and then they can carry out their research, and then they can go back. Okay, so if the country is not having a permanent research building, they can depend upon these kind of hotels to carry out their work in the Arctic. Again, what I understand is that these hotels, just like the research vessel and other things, these hotels are also very, very expensive. Okay. And again, coming to the food and other things, when you enter into Arctic, you have seen 8 people from India at a time, or 6 people or 8 people. And again, for a one expedition, the maximum intake capacity, or the maximum allowed group member in one expedition is 8. In one expedition is 8. Why? Because at a time, only 8 people can stay at Himadri. The facility is only for 8 people. Okay. And again, how you eat the food and other things when you are a part of the research community is that you are never allowed to cook anything at Himadri. There is no kitchen at Himadri. So you are not allowed to cook anything at Himadri. So for just for your research activity and other things, the India government is paying for your food also. Okay. So there is an international mess hall like this. So there is a kitchen is there. So that is, it's like a buffet arrangement. So this is the dining center. So there is an international mess hall. So you have to depend upon this international mess hall for your food. So they have a timing. So all the researchers have to obey. While you are at the research station for food, you have to obey the timing, that international timing of the international mess hall. So I remember the morning breakfast is from 7 to 7:30. 7 to 7:30, and the lunch is from 12:30 or 12:20 to 1, 12:30 to 1, and the dinner is from 4:30 to 5, evening 4:30 to 5. So after 5 o'clock, there won't be any food distribution in this particular mess hall. So what you can do, suppose you cannot cook anything at home, anything at Himadri. Because as per the rule, and due to this polar bear issue and other things, you are not supposed to cook anything, especially when we about Indians. Actually, we cook a lot of spicy things and other things. So the smell and other things can attract these kind of animals, so that nothing is allowed to cook in the international community. So if you feel hungry, and one thing is that this is 24/7 open. The doors of this particular international mess hall is completely open, and they won't close it. And again, one more interesting thing is that it's not like India. All the research stations, see, Himadri is having one main door. Okay, main door, the main entrance, it's always open. Like there is no mechanism of just completely closing or locking the main door. Okay. You just close it, that's all. No locking, nothing. And for each and every research station, there is no locking. Okay, you just close it, that's all. And nobody's there to disturb you. Okay, and this is for the mess hall also. It's always open. And if you feel hungry after 5 o'clock, suppose you feel hungry, anyway, your next to food is only at 7 a.m. So there are, what they have kept is that they have kept some kind of juices are kept there, then biscuits are kept there, and milk is kept there, cornflakes is kept there. So if you feel hungry, you can just again come back, and you can enter, and you can just take some juice, milk or cornflakes, and then you can eat. Okay, so there is no that kind of restriction. Okay. But the other food items will be served only during this fixed time period only. And most of the food items are like not the Indian food and the spicy food, just like this smashed potatoes and then smoked fish and boiled vegetables, etc., etc. Okay, no other spicy varieties of food and other things are served as part of the international rules. Okay. So again, this is also another, just like the post office, this is also very, very interesting. Like I have told you that this particular area, New Elsend, Longyearbyen, New Elsend, all were very famous for the mining activity. And especially during the Second World War and other things, these places were used a lot for the mining operations. So this train is actually used by the mining community to transport coal. So forever, it's very surprising that still these people have maintained that train as such. So that just like the post office, that particular train is also maintained. So whenever the tourist people are making the visit to the Arctic Circle, so they mainly come to the research area just to have a look into the post office, just to have a look into this train and other things which have been used by the mining community. Okay, and not to look into our research activities. And again, when you enter into Arctic, I have already told you that it's an international community. We have stations by very advanced countries like Germany, France, then China, then Italy, all the other, several other countries. So Russia is actually having their own station. No need of Russia to come here and be a part of this initiative, because they are already there in the Arctic Circle. And Greenland, they are already there in the Arctic Circle. Then Alaska, they are already there in the Arctic Circle. So those who are not in the Arctic Circle are mainly depending upon this particular facility so as to carry out their work in the Arctic region. So you get a lot of chance to interact with international scientists. So this is a photograph of 2017 expeditions where we had a visit to the Himadri station by the Arctic Science Forum. Arctic Science Forum is actually monitoring all the research activity that is being carried out in the Arctic. So when you submit a project to NCOR, after getting selected, before you enter into Arctic, you have to upload all the project related things, means the idea of the project into this Arctic Science Forum. So this science forum is closely monitoring what are the different areas or the topics which are being covered by different countries. Okay. And again, you get a lot of opportunity to interact with internationally recognized people. So this person is actually Martin Lunen. He's from Netherlands, from a university in Netherlands, and he's doing a lot of work on Arctic birds, especially on this Arctic goose. So I think maybe he has more than 30 years of experience of coming to the Arctic. So for the last several years, nearly about 30 years, this person has been coming to Arctic from Netherlands and doing a lot of work on Arctic. So those who are very much interested in working on the birds, so they can get a lot of information by having an interaction with these kind of international people who are there for their summer batch of expeditions. Okay, and again, you can have a lot of, apart from the polar bear, there are some other interesting animals also. The reindeer is there, and the walrus and other things are there. And you can see a lot of such varieties when you are into the field. And another interesting bird is Arctic tern, and this Arctic tern is very active there in the summer. And you must be knowing that Arctic tern, that which flies the longest distance from flying almost from the North Pole to the South Pole. So that means these birds are very active there in the summer season. So likewise, not only the polar bear, the reindeer, then the seal and all other, the walrus and many other varieties of birds are also there during the summer season. So these animals and birds are very active during the summer season. And these are different photographs. That is just for your interest. I have taken the photographs of the glaciers. So these are actually the glaciers. These are old glaciers. Okay. So if it is completely covered with ice, it will be completely white. And then, okay, so that means a little bit of ice is melting down. When the summer goes on, it will start melting. And you can see a lot of icebergs which are floating over the surface of the water when you are into the field. Okay. And again, just for the geology people, I think you should never forget about the geology people also. My sampling techniques were more into the ocean side. I have told you that the geology people are actually, they are doing the toughest job in the Arctic team. That is what I believe. Because they are mainly focusing on, they have nothing to do with the oceans. More work is on the glacier. So you look at the picture, these are the glaciers which are actually bordering the water bodies. So if we look into this picture, we see that it's very easy to reach into this glacier. ഈ മഞ്ഞുമലയിലേക്ക് നമുക്ക് പെട്ടെന്ന് അങ്ങോട്ട് ഓടിക്കയറാം എന്നുള്ള ഒരു ഫീൽ ആയിരിക്കും. If you that is what we have when you look into this picture. But actually, it's not like that. Okay. The thing is that if you start from your research station to reach the top of a glacier, there are so many glaciers. So people from different country, they are focusing on different glaciers. To reach the top of a glaciers, actually these people are actually walking around 4 to 5 hours. 4 to 5 hours. So their aim is to collect ice core. Their aim is to collect, most of them are working on the paleo aspect and other things. So they are trying to take ice core from the glaciers. So not only from India, from all over the world, the geologist, for a geologist to go to this field it's a very tough job. Like they need to have a walk of nearly 4 to 5 hours from the research station to reach the top of a particular glacier. And again, they have to collect the ice core. So you can imagine how heavy will be the ice core. Again, they have to walk 4 to 5 hours to come back to the station. So actually, it's a full day walking through the glaciers to reach the particular area of the glacier, collecting the sample, and with that heavy load of ice core, they are coming back to the field. So working on the geological aspect is very, very tough as far as this particular area is concerned. So when there was one person who wanted to go to the glacier to collect some sample of ice, just for a curiosity, in 2016, I think in 2016, we also accompanied him. And actually it was very tough for us because we cannot come back in between, because we are going as a group and one person is having the flare gun and the rifle. At any time, there can be polar bears. So it's not like that we can stop in between and then we can come back. Anyway, you have to complete that particular sampling and then you have to come back. Okay. So it took almost 5 hours for us on one side only, 5 hours, again return 5 hours. So this is from the top of a glacier, not from the land. It is from the top of, this picture is from the top of a glacier. Okay. So these are some interesting things that I wanted to share with you. So I hope I have tried to keep it as general as possible, making it interesting to all the audience. And we have PhD students working on, I have PhD students, one girl working on the Arctic region and one girl have a part of her work concentrated in the Southern Ocean. So we have some publications, interesting publications, which have come from Arctic and Southern Ocean. We just completed it. And maybe in the near future, we can have some interesting publications. Anyway, I would like to thank National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, Dr. Krishnan for the Arctic group and Dr. Anil for the Southern Ocean group. Again, Dr. Anil is also from QSAT. He is now leading the Southern Ocean research group, and for all the opportunities that they have given us to be a part of Arctic and Southern Ocean expeditions, and also to Minister of Earth Science for all the funding and other things. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anu. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's very interesting and very curious presentation. Only a very few persons like you can share these unique experiences to us. Shall we can go to the next session, question and answer session.
Okay.
Yeah, heavy rain.
Okay, I know.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, fine.
Audible.
In the lower panel, you can find Q&A box.
Okay, chat session.
No chat, Q&A.
Okay, yeah, okay. Ma'am, how did you choose the field of oceanography? Okay.
You can select the question from genuine questions. You can select.
Okay, okay. Ma'am, have traveled these places. Ma'am, can I join after my MSc biotechnology? Just go through the questions and then I will answer. Okay.
Okay.
How can I participate in expedition? Oceanography, I heard only microbiology. What are the qualifications required? Okay, ma'am, could you suggest a good university to Pondicherry University, best for marine biology? Share your experience. Okay, what are the major water quality parameters affecting the fish diversity? Operations, submarine operations. Okay. Ma'am, is there any criteria for countries to establish secured biomagnification? What are the job opportunity for women in oceanography? Great presentation. Okay. Okay. See, actually, some are like general question, like how to opt for a career in oceanography and what are the best institutes offering courses in oceanography. And actually, see the career opportunities in oceanography nowadays, we have a lot of opportunities in oceanography because a lot of institutes, central institutes are there as part of Ministry of Earth Science and CSIR. See, for example, if you come to Kerala, NIO, National Institute of Oceanography is there under CSIR. And Center for Marine Living Resources, CMLRE, Kochi is there. Then CMFRI is there, but CMFRI, I don't think they are doing a lot on oceans. Their focus is mainly on the fisheries aspect, not into the too much into the other aspect of oceanography. Anyway, CMFRI is also there. And again, coming to the institutes, universities, we have the Cochin University of Science and Technology. It is having a marine science department, School of Marine Science. School of Marine Science is offering MSc in Physical Oceanography, MSc in Hydrochemistry, like marine chemistry, then geology, geophysics, atmospheric science, environmental science. A lot of courses are there. So CUSAT is the best option for you to choose for any course related to ocean. Again, you come to CUFOS because CUFOS was started only in 2011, so that people will always compare. So anyway, CUFOS is also now leading in terms of the number of courses as well as the new programs that we are offering. We are having MSc in marine chemistry, then geology is there, environmental science is there, marine biology is there, marine biotechnology is there. Programs are being offered by the School of Ocean Science and Technology, Q4.